Native English speaker interviewing you. Interviewers taking down notes as you speak and continuously speaking for 2 minutes and cross-questioning by the end of this interview. All these things are more than enough to leave anyone overwhelmed by the end of this test. Hello, welcome to Luster. This is Indu. Today we are going to discuss top 10 Ielts speaking tips that will help you ace through this test and not feel overwhelmed by the end of it. Let's begin. Tip number 1. Avoid giving answers in one line or one word. The first round of this interview, also called the introductory round, always contains a few questions that can be answered in one word or one line only. But you should avoid giving really short answers because the interviewer requires some content to assess your English speaking proficiency. And if you don't give them content, they will assess you as not being comfortable with the language, and thus they will deduct a few of your marks. So avoid giving answers in one line. Rather, add a few extra details. For example, if you are asked, "Are you a professional or a student?" the answer for this question can be easily given in only one sentence. That is, "I'm a student" or "I'm a professional." But you should not do just that. You should add a few details about whatever you are choosing to answer about. If you're a professional, add a few details about your profession. If you're a student, add a few details about what you are studying. So, answer to this question, "Are you a student or a working professional?" should look kind of like this. "I'm a student. I study maths and I'm in third year of my graduation." Tip number 2. Don't give too lengthy answers. I know I said that giving too short answers is a problem, but making them lengthier than needed is also a problem. Since the interviewer is only assigned about 15 to 20 minutes for your interview, giving too lengthy answers may keep you from being able to finish the interview on time. So, just avoid giving too lengthy answers. Realize that if your answer is getting more than 2 or 3 sentences long for the first round, cut your answers short. Tip number 3 is related to the second round of this interview, about the cue card that you make when you are in the cue card section. Make sure that your cue card notes are neat and clean. Some people make a list of things that they want to talk about. Some people make a flowchart. A flowchart, for example, is much more easier to understand at a glance. When you are responding to the cue card round, you can only take a few glances on your notes. So make sure that your notes are understandable even if you are looking at them for a fraction of a second. So make them clean, well organized and neat, and have a structure memorized so that if you follow it in your real exam, you will not have any problem continuing through all the points. Tip number 4. Don't try to memorize the cue card topics. This is the most frequently asked question, that whether a student can find most frequently asked question for the cue card round or not. Even if you find some cue card that you have practiced before, you should not try to mimic your previous answer, because what the interviewer is trying to assess there is how well can you use the language in your real life. Many students tend to think if they get a cue card that they have already prepared in this practice session, they will perform better in the real exam. While the reality is quite the opposite. If we encounter a cue card that we have already practiced in a classroom for the IELTS practice sessions, chances are you will try to mimic your previous answer. You will try your best to remember what you said about the cue card when you attempted it for the first time. So, if you get a cue card that is already practiced by you, try to give it a completely new approach. Make your answer natural and spontaneous. Also, try to keep the talk as natural as it can be throughout this interview, because the aim of this interview is to see the way you will communicate when you are out there in the foreign country where you can only speak English. So this is just a scenario that they are getting you to practice to be comfortable when you are out there in another country. Tip number 5. For the cue card section, keep speaking until the interviewer stops you. In most of the interviews, The interviewer lets the student know that they have covered their 2 minute of window for responding for the cue card section. And you should do the same. You should speak until the interviewer stops you and says that you have covered your time. Let's move to the third round. That indicates you to stop giving the answer for the cue card, because the cue card round is where most of the grading for speaking interview is done. They assess you for your fluency, your pronunciation, your intonation, and relevance of your answer to the question they asked you. So, speak until you are told to stop. It indicates that you are much more comfortable with the language and you have also very well understood the question. It also eliminates the possibility of not fulfilling the required duration of speaking about the cue card. Tip number 6. Be yourself. Be as natural as you can be. Relax, just enjoy yourself. Listen to yourself speak in a new language that you have practiced a lot for, and give the answers just as you would naturally talk to your friend if they only speak English. While giving an Ielts speaking interview, it is natural to think that using advanced vocabulary, using complex structures, and using so many phrases will help you achieve a better score, but it is not so. Advanced vocabulary and phrases and complex structures are only well used when they are required. Instead, just being natural, clear, and comprehensive is enough to get a really good score in Ielts speaking. By being clear and comprehensive, we mean to use complex structures and advanced vocabulary only when required. By being natural, what I mean here is to respond to a question in the same way that you would respond to a stranger that you met on some subway. Keep the sentences of moderate length, from 2 to 5 sentences each, and keep your answers to the point.
Tip number 7 is to be honest. When we are honest about what we are speaking, we are confident and we are at ease. Since we believe in what we are saying, it helps us to be fluent and use the correct intonation and correct grammar. Intonation is nothing but rising and lowering of the pitch when we are speaking. Using right intonation gives the impression of us being more comfortable with the language. Tip number 8 is to not be so honest. Instead, pick funny and light incidents to talk about. Unlike being honest, being too honest and spilling more details than required can often lead to awkward situation. Whenever required, pick funny and light topics to talk about. It will make it easier for you to talk, and also you will not be conscious about what you just said. For example, if you are required to talk about the last incident when you had an argument with one of your siblings, instead of being too honest and talking about the real incident that you had with your sibling when you had a heated conversation, pick something light and funny to talk about. It will help you easily cover up the time that you are required to cover for the cue card section, and also it will be much easier for you to talk about something funny rather than something serious. Tip number 9. Practice narrating imaginary stories. In your actual test, you might be asked to talk about some incident that you have never experienced. For example, they may ask you to describe an incident where you went to a museum. How did you feel about it? And whom did you visit it with? Let's say you have never been to a museum. This is where your practice of narrating imaginary stories will come in handy. You can talk about any story that you heard in movies or from your friends and family, make those stories your own, and use them as your answer. Tip number 10 is to dress formally. Now, this tip is completely optional. There isn't a code which you should follow when you are going for Ielts test. But since this test is an educational test, the dressing should be well-mannered. It should be in accordance with the reason why you are giving the test. You should dress in a manner that makes you feel comfortable, confident, and an impressive English speaker. And which is what we all want, right? Guys, this is all for today. I hope the tips helped you, and don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you want more content like this. Thank you for watching. See you soon.